job advice in general. And one of them is about, we had a question come up. Barshan mentioned it at some point. It's come up a lot, and many people have been talked to, like young folks. So the young folks dilemma of what do you do with your career right now? What is the value of a degree and all that stuff? And I'm curious. My initial response when it came up earlier today was a particular way. I thought about it a bit more, and I'm curious. I don't know if Bradly or Morgan or other folks have thoughts about it, but my general sense on it is basically the question of like, how much is the degree worth it going forward? And what I just put in chat was basically operate like your degree is something that will not hold its value long term. But I tried to my slightly more, that's a little bit more hot take. What I said earlier today, and I think I'd open this up for discussion, is basically, I think when we think about degrees, I think the questions like, do I pursue a degree or do I pursue a graduate degree or not? I think it really comes down like things you should look at when you're evaluating that should be time, or like basically costs and benefits, but in terms of money spent, but also the time you're going to be asked to commit to doing something. If you have a like very obvious no's would be long degrees that are very expensive and aren't really about anything you would particularly want to do. That seems like, okay, there's no point to do that unless the only thing that might be is like strategically, if you need to get a degree because you want to relocate for various reasons, like there's other indirect reasons to pursue that for some people. But for just career development, maybe not, unless like relocating or getting your foot in a door somewhere else. Like the reality is, for a long time now, finishing your PhD in computer science is like not a big deal. Like a lot of people go, oh, I got in, and then they drop out a month or like a year, within a year's time. Like that trend's been coming for a long time, particularly in certain technical spaces. Now, I'm not advocating you don't do that, but I just feel like really being strategic and thinking, what are the current ways value is seen now? And I think the most important thing is like, whatever you are, whether it's a job, in the job sense, there's like the saying, like you're either earning or you're learning kind of a thing. But like, unless you're progressing a skill and having something to show for it, whether it's a career or a degree, that's a useful lens to look at. Is like, what are you actually developing and getting some kind of a portfolio or artifact or thing. You say, during this time, I did blank, and here's what I can show for it, and here's what I can build on it. That's sort of the core. But I'm open to other commentary because we're all kind of in different points of view about that and locations.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess a degree losing its value is kind of relative, right? I mean, like the argument for a lot of degrees is it helps you to be able to think and transfer skills and things like that. Like if you got trained just to be like a Pascal programmer, you know, at one time that was pretty valuable, but now it's not so much. Although now, you know, if you have legacy code written in Pascal, you might be the only person to know how to use it. So it depends on what you're learning in the degree program. And you get different types of degrees that become very hot and then they cool off. This goes in cycles. Computer science has done this before, where you get maybe a recession where it's no longer as valuable, but then it ramps up after a while because maybe the number of majors falls. If you go back to the data, you'll see the cycle of different degrees that are awarded, and people will rush into a degree program because it's hot, because there's some interest in it, and then it cools off. The whole idea here is that some people might recommend, well, you pick the best degree for the times, but then the times change. So it's really hard to know what the best degree is. There are all sorts of arguments here. I'm not going to give you an answer that's definitive, but...
Yeah, I know we can come back to this later. Just to get to the other topic quickly, I thought this was a useful thing to think about. So Ethan Mollick, who I know he's got a bunch of followers and it's almost cliche. He looks like someone, oh, he's just a big name. I think he's really in the trenches about latest model developments and how it affects career. So I really would recommend following him. If you're someone who's stepping into the arena around technology, what's this latest model doing? He's not the only perspective you should have. But the thing he brings up consistently, I think, are pretty of high value. So this comment that I have here is this comment here, I think, is really good. And I try to elaborate on it. What's the token uses? And I don't think we should be seeking high token jobs. I think it's a great question to diagnostic, like this ping of the spider web, or if you go, drop the pebble in the pond and see where the ripples go. Like you can tell if they're prepared for that. If they're like tokens, what do you mean like you can get a lot by how they'll handle that. I think it's a nice question to ask, especially if you're not quite sure what the organization is or does. A lot of us picking up startup type jobs, or like if you go to Anthropic, how they're going to reference token is pretty obvious to you. But if you're unsure of an organization or a role or direct, like who's a supervisor leading a team, these kind of things are going to be interesting for you to get a sense of. And I think that's something that absolutely I would advise anyone, to have in your pocket. Like it's a great, people always say, oh, what are the questions you should ask the interviewers? I think this is a fine one to ask right now, even if they have no response or you're not really encoding, like I think it's just a great sense of like where their take on you and also the AI workforce that is maybe replacing you or working with you, or their expectations. I think you've seen a compliment to this would be, I think it was Jensen Huang, Mr. NVIDIA, or someone similar to him saying, I hire a senior engineer or a senior person here, they better be using all their tokens in their job because I'm giving them the allocation to do it. Right? That's at a very particular lab structure with a very particular take on AI and a pro AI usage and so on and so forth for LLMs and tokens and whatnot. So it's like you're going to be in different arenas where those things are changing or those norms are not unique. So I think learning how to that's sort of the new, like no one's ever been taught, hey, how do you talk to your future employer about AI token usage in your job? Like that never came up in my education for a variety of reasons, but that's like de facto the topic of the day that will come up. So I'll leave it at that. Any follow-ups or things? I know we're kind of out of time. So, yeah.
I think the conversation that you have with your employer should be, you should have questions, and asking them unusual questions is a good way to find out how they do see you. Like being able to uncover how they do see you is a good litmus test for whether you are entering into a toxic culture or not.
Yeah.
The reason that tech companies are laying off people is because their balance sheets are insane right now, and they can't afford to pay programmers when they are selling their business to fund data centers. It's not a productivity story. It's a business finance story, but questions about how you're going to be treated should be number one. And I just say that, like, I don't see degrees and a lot of the kind of, it's a little like YC, where it's not so much the skills, it's not so much having the degree, it's like, what did you do with that 4 years? So it's like using it as a chance to show, like, when given opportunities, this is what you do with them. There's just a couple things.
Yes. Do we have a few minutes, Bradley, or we got to go?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Cool. Really great points that I would double down on with what Morgan said. And I would love to, I'm making some materials around this. Like, one of the most important things you can do as a career person, especially early career folks, you need to have a very clear hunger and desire to understand organizationally where you're fitting in and who is doing what. And this can be a university lab, this can be a nonprofit organization. Your goal is to see what your, both from a top down and a bottom up, how your impersonal role is supposed to do, and what are the top down pressures on that and the bottom up or like sideways pressures affecting what that is. And every organization is somewhat unique to that end, but over time you develop an intuition of, okay, a lot of university labs like this, a lot of smaller groups like this, a lot of big groups are like that. That process, like I almost want to make a frontier map of what that process is, if you will, because like that's like I'm kind of relying on my D&D stuff here, but like that is the wisdom stat. Like that is your ability to discern insight about the direction of your role in the company is how much you need to know that to evaluate a lot of other factors that are coming up indirectly in an organization. So I call this like organizational literacy or like organizational structure literacy or whatever. I'm fleshing out what to call it specifically, but yes to that. And also like what Morgan said about how you're using the 4 years or what YC looks at or other things. Yeah, I think that's maybe a better way to say what I was trying to get at, which is essentially the way I look at it now, and even in things that I'm doing at my own scale, is sort of what is someone doing relative to the opportunities that they have. And it's less about kind of an absolute scale of like, it's great if you have this number of publications or projects that you can show in a portfolio, and more of a certain quality is better than less of a lesser quality. Yes. But like, what are you doing with the time there? And also, I think for things like YC or other accelerator programs, which is different than a career job, which is different than getting into a lab. These are all kind of different things. Like for the pitching venture capital, having a really compelling thesis of seeming like a winner, but like having something that you're building that's like cultivating a line of successes towards a particular thing is unique to that space. That's not the same as developing a career in a tech space, or the same as progressing in the old academic ladder or the new academic ladder. Is it all success? Yes, but like how you convey and present it is totally unique. So kind of like finding that. But the common theme, I think, of increasingly I don't want to say a portfolio based world, but I think the most valuable things are people that are willing to grow and change. I think people that are very disadvantaged in the world right now are people who are kind of just catching up to, like one of my friends, a very brilliant person, a bioinformatician, didn't use AI for a long time. And then in the last year, since he's been teaching a course to a local university, being a TA or like kind of more than a TA at that course with a professor, when he first started doing that course, I don't use LLMs at all, what I'm doing, because it's so niche and what I'm doing, there's no applications there. So he's kind of catching up to that now, where the professors was like, well, actually, you can use it this way now. So I think there's sort of this emerging trajectories of using the technology and just getting used to it. I think the last thing I'll say about this, I think it's incredibly popular in a lot of obvious ways. Flashing your AI familiarity credentials right now is hot, but it is changing slightly. Like the backlash stuff is there. But I think what's more important to do is to identify yourself as a sober evaluator and user of, hey, I'm kind of with this stuff. I know about it. I built some real things that show I can do this, but I'm also not tying myself to the mast of I'm Gen AI, everything I do. Like maybe some places you do want to be, I'm AI native AF. I'm AI native about everything I do. And that's the right way to pitch yourself in certain spaces. But I advocate for a little balance and sobriety there. I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more to say, but I think this is the stuff everybody has questions about what they do, and I think the answer is there's general truths and some niche stuff to pursue as well. And then I'll pull up, we're not going to go over this now, but if you want more on the thing that Morgan said about why they're making cuts and laying people off, this is a little bit of commentary to that end that I wrote a few months ago and still mostly is applicable. So you check that out. The end.
All right, thanks. So when I was 10 years old, I worried about like video game tokens and my budget for that. So we've come full circle. All right. Thank you, Jesse, for that, and Morgan and Barshan for your questions. And we'll see you next week. Thank
And if
you.
you guys have questions about this stuff, please put them in the chat. We'll try to address them more next time too.